headlines. Enjoying the sights and sounds of Paris, President Moon Jae-in is in France on the first leg of his marathon trip around Europe. We have the latest from our correspondent in the French capital. More inter-Korean talks at the border. High-level representatives from the two sides are due to be sitting down in Panmunjeom. On the agenda, transport links, sports cooperation and war-separated family reunions. Plus, the bodies of the 5 South Korean climbers killed by a powerful snowstorm on a Himalayan mountain over the weekend are all recovered. Let's begin with the South Korean leader's tour of Europe. President Moon Jae-in is in France, where he's been spreading the word about Korea's vibrant culture and art scene, as well as promoting his administration's policies on cleaning up the environment. Our Shin Se-min, who is traveling with the president, files this report from Paris.
It's part of President Moon Jae-in's cultural diplomacy during his state visit to France. Perhaps receiving the wildest welcome and cheer, President Moon held a joint cultural event on Sunday with Korean artists and some 400 French officials and fans. The Moon administration has a track record of arranging such concerts, having previously held one in Saudi Arabia last year to help spread the Korean wave. Chart-topping boy band BTS and other Korean artists entertained the attendees, with the presidential office saying the concert was aimed at boosting cultural exchanges between the two sides. The president also highlighted an issue of a global concern, the environment. President Moon tested out Hyundai Motors' fuel cell electric vehicle Int'l in downtown Paris and called for stronger collaboration between the country's automakers. He then discussed the challenges facing the mass adoption of electric vehicles with industry officials. In conjunction with the president's visit, Hyundai Motors says it'll sign an MOU with 2 French companies to ship 5,000 hydrogen cars to France by 2025. 3 of Hyundai's hydrogen fuel cell models are already being used as taxis in Paris. And the first FCEV charging station in Paris was established by Air Liquide, a France-based multinational industrial gas and service company. The high point of diplomacy between Seoul and Paris comes Monday with a summit meeting, the second of its kind since the two leaders took office in May last year. They'll be discussing climate change, terrorism, human rights, and the hope is sympathy for North Korea. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, Paris.
So let's stay with President Moon's trip to France. The South Korean leader has been sitting down with the press in Paris, sharing his vision for the Korean Peninsula and Northeast Asia as well. He says it's time for the world to show North Korea that the regime made the right decision to denuclearize. Hwang Ho-jun reports.
Speaking to France's conservative daily Le Figaro, President Moon touted France as one of the most important nations contributing to peace and prosperity on the global stage. The South Korean leader thanked his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron for France's strong support for his administration's North Korea policies. President Moon said planting the seed of peace on the Korean Peninsula is part of the process of ensuring peace and order in Northeast Asia. President Moon reiterated his desire to form an East Asian rail community, a proposal he made in August to bring together 6 Northeast Asian countries and the U.S. to shore up the region's economic and security foundation. Touching on Europe's multi-nation treaty ratified in 1952, the European Coal and Steel Community, initiated by French diplomat Robert Schuman, President Moon said it played an important part in establishing the European Union as it exists today. The president also teased the next big event on his tour of Europe, his sit-down with Pope Francis at the Vatican. With North Korea expected to be the main focus of his discussions with Pope Francis, President Moon said it's time the international community answers the decision made by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to steer the regime away from its nuclear and missile programs. He said the world needs to verify that the North is genuine about its willingness to denuclearize and help North Korea take the path to peace. President Moon added he would pass on Kim's message to Pope Francis when they meet. Kim reportedly told the South Korean leader during their recent summit in the North Korean capital that he would, quote, ardently welcome Pope Francis if he visited Pyongyang. 황호준, Arirang News.
Now, the two Koreas are holding their fifth round of high-level talks of the year today at the truce village of Panmunjeom. The talks are to check on how well South and North Korea are implementing their September summit agreement, dubbed the Pyongyang Joint Declaration, and to rubber stamp schedules for follow-up talks in various different fields. For more, let's connect to our Unification Ministry correspondent Oh Jung-hee, who's standing by the office of Inter-Korean Dialogue. So, Jung-hee, do we know if these talks have started yet?
Mark, we were expecting the talks to have begun by now. They were scheduled to start at 10 this morning at the Peace House located on the South Korean side of the border village of Panmunjeom. As you mentioned, this is the fifth round of high-level talks between the two Koreas this year alone, and comes a month after the current leaders of South and North Korea had their third summit of 2018 in the North Korean capital. South and North Korea are both sending 5-member delegations, with Seoul's Unification Minister Jo Myung-kyun and Lee Sun-kwon, the head of Pyongyang's reunification committee, leading each of them. Vice ministers in charge of transport and railroad, as well as sports, will also attend. Plus, North Korea is sending officials responsible for environmental protection and economic cooperation.
So, Jung-hee, the two sides have plenty to talk about, and we know this because of all the action plans stipulated in the Pyongyang Joint Declaration. Just walk us through what's on the agenda today.
Well, Mark, it seems the two sides will focus much of their attention on their railway and road connection plans. I mean, when Seoul's Unification Minister visited Pyongyang earlier this month, he specifically pointed to rescheduling and beginning joint railway inspections as the most imminent issue to be dealt with. Well, South Korea actually initially planned to send a research team over to the north in late August for railway inspections, but that failed because the UN command actually disapproved of it. So this matter is a high priority for Seoul and Pyongyang because it's stipulated in September's summit agreement that they hold a groundbreaking ceremony within this year for related constructions. But other than that, the issue of war-torn families is likely to be touched upon. In September, President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un agreed to open a permanent facility for war-torn families to meet, as well as enable video meetings and video messages. The two sides could also talk about ways to cooperate in forestry and medical care. Both the vice sports ministers of the two sides are also taking part in today's talks. That could mean Seoul and Pyongyang kickstart discussions on forming joint teams for future international sports events, including the 2020 Summer Olympics, and launching a joint bid to host the 2032 Summer Olympics. A concert by North Korea's art troupe could also be on the table as they're visiting Seoul this month as a reciprocal visit following a performance by South Korean artists earlier this year. Well, Mark, after today's discussions, we could see some specific dates set for other types of inter-Korean talks. Those could be the Red Cross talks or follow-up discussions for railways, roads, forestry, and even the newly added medical care field, as the two Koreas had such talks in late June and early July. Back to you, Mark.
Well, thank you very much for that report, Jung-hee. Fantastic reporting as always, and we look forward to hearing your updates throughout the day. Now, an international fleet review on Jeju Island concluded its 5-day campaign on Sunday. The event, attended by some 10,000 troops from 12 countries and naval representatives from 46 nations, promoted world peace over the seas. While South Korea and the US conducted joint drills in the past, the South Korean Navy said there will be no joint drills this time. Instead, it will conduct joint drills with its counterparts from India and Canada. The fleet review was staged at Jeju Naval Base, which was completed in February 2016. US President Donald Trump has indicated that he isn't sure how long his Defense Secretary James Mattis plans to stay in his administration. In an interview with CBS's 60 Minutes that was broadcast on Sunday, President Trump said the two have a very good relationship, but suggested there was the possibility Mattis could step down at some point. Trump added that Mattis is sort of a Democrat, increasing speculation the two have been at odds over certain issues. Now, during US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's fourth visit to Pyongyang earlier this month, North Korea reportedly made clear that it's not going to declare its nuclear assets, at least not yet. According to Japan's Yomiuri Shimbun newspaper on Monday, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un refused Pompeo's request for even a partial declaration, saying without the establishment of trust, Washington will not have faith in the list anyway, and asked for another list which will result in conflict. Kim reportedly added that trust between the two sides is foremost, and if trust is established through the declaration of the end of the Korean War, then denuclearization will happen in a speedy manner where the US will not have to worry. He also said the regime had taken preemptive measures like returning war remains, and the US should take appropriate measures like easing sanctions. Now, 5 South Korean climbers and their 4 Nepalese guides were found dead on Saturday after a snowstorm in the Himalayas. Their bodies have been retrieved. Oh Young with more.
Rescue authorities have retrieved the bodies of the 5 South Korean climbers and 4 Nepalese guides who were found dead in the Himalayas after a violent snowstorm last week. The South Korean embassy in Nepal said Sunday that all 9 bodies were transported to a nearby village after a mission that began early in the morning. The mountaineers were found dead Saturday near their base camp at an altitude of 3,500 metres on Mount Gurja in western Nepal. The team included 49-year-old Kim Chang-ho, who was the first South Korean to climb all 14 peaks of 8,000 metres on the Himalayan range without supplemental oxygen. Kim's group was attempting to scale the rarely climbed 7,000-metre Gurja Himal when the snowstorm struck Friday. The bad weather had thwarted the rescue, preventing helicopters from landing, plus the site of the disaster is extremely remote, estimated to take at least 3 days to reach from the capital of Kathmandu. It's said to be the worst climbing accident in the South Asian country in 2 years. Seoul's Foreign Ministry on Sunday said it would send a support team to the site to help with the retrieval operation and the funeral arrangements, and to guide the victims' families on their unfortunate trip to Nepal. Oseong, Arirang News.
European nations are pressuring Saudi Arabia to give a response to the case of the missing Saudi journalist that's made headlines around the world. Turkey has accused Riyadh of killing the reporter inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Those are allegations the kingdom strongly rejects. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Noah Aram. So, Aram, there is now much more international pressure, and it's growing on the Saudis over the disappearance of this journalist.
That's right, Mark. The foreign ministers of Britain, France and Germany released a joint statement on Sunday saying they are treating the case with the utmost seriousness. They demanded for what they called a credible investigation to establish the truth about what happened to Jamal Khashoggi and to identify those responsible for his disappearance. The 3 countries also called for Saudi Arabia and Turkey to jointly work on the investigation and for Riyadh to give a detailed response to the murder accusation put forward by Istanbul. Saudi Arabia's King Salman reportedly spoke with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan about the disappearance, and the countries are said to be considering establishing a working group to discuss the Khashoggi case. There was more pressure from the United States, which said it is considering boycotting a major international conference to be held in the kingdom later this month. President Trump also said Washington will inflict severe punishment if Riyadh is found to be responsible for the alleged death of Khashoggi. US lawmakers have also called for economic sanctions to be imposed on the regime. Saudi Arabia said it rejects political and economic threats, adding it will retaliate to any action with a bigger one. Riyadh has continued to deny that Saudi agents killed Khashoggi inside the consulate, calling the Turkish claims lies. With just over 3 weeks until the US midterm elections, the Democratic Party is still leading opinion polls. A new ABC News Washington Post poll shows Democratic House candidates still lead Republicans 53 to 42% among voters. However, the GOP is closing the gap with the help of President Trump's improved approval rating. Also, the share of voters who want Congress to be controlled by Democrats has fallen from 60 to 54% in the space of just a few months. White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow has played down the recent drop on Wall Street as a normal correction. He told Fox News on Sunday that he thinks the, quote, background is very positive for the stock market and that people should stay calm. Kudlow also said President Trump respects the Federal Reserve's autonomy, despite last week's remarks that the Fed had, quote, gone crazy raising interest rates. Meanwhile, Kudlow said a meeting between Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping will likely take place at Argentina's G20 summit to be held next month. Hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets of Berlin over the weekend to protest against racism and the far right. Organisers put the turnout at 242,000, which would mark one of Germany's biggest rallies in recent years. The demonstration comes at a time when Germany's far-right and anti-immigrant Alternative for Germany party is gaining popularity, particularly in Bavaria. However, the protest seems to have done little to change public opinion, as the AfD managed to enter the state parliament for the first time after Bavaria's state elections on Sunday. Exit polls also suggest Chancellor Angela Merkel's sister party, the CSU, is set to lose its absolute majority.
Thank you as always to our Aram there for the world news. Now we're going to switch our attention to domestic politics. The National Assembly is now into its second week of audits for government ministries and agencies. The Statistics Agency is likely to face scrutiny in Monday's audit, with the opposition expected to criticise the government's economic policies and question whether the recent replacement of the agency's chief came as a result of data that didn't reflect that well on the government. At the audit of the Fair Trade Commission, rival parties are expected to clash over regulations on conglomerates. The ruling party will likely say they are needed to ensure a balanced economy, while the opposition is expected to claim the policies are eroding firms' global competitiveness. Other agencies up for inspection include the Defence Acquisition Programme Administration and the Food and Drug Safety Ministry. Now, nearly 35,000 South Korean-owned Facebook accounts are believed to have been hit by a data leak following the hacking of the US-based online social media company last month. According to the Korea Communications Commission on Sunday, it received the numbers from Facebook after the firm announced in September that access tokens for 50 million accounts were stolen in a security breach. Leaked information includes users' names, emails and phone numbers. The KCC added the number of South Korean accounts subject to the data leaks could in fact grow following additional investigations. The 2018 KBO League came to an end on Sunday, leaving 5 teams vying for the top prize in South Korean baseball. The Seoul-based Doosan Bears have dominated this year, but as we know in sport, anything can happen in the postseason, with the Korean Series title up for grabs. Lee Jae reports.
The KBO League season, which ended later than usual this year due to the Asian Games, drew to a close on Sunday after an exhausting 144 games for each of the 10 teams. The 5-time Korean Series champions, the Doosan Bears, took control of the season early and never looked back, finishing first 14.5 games ahead of the SK Wyverns in second. Thanks to the league's best defense, depth, and starting pitching, the Bears earned a straight ticket to the Korean Series, where they are hoping to win the team's 6th title. But no team is more excited to make the postseason than the Hanwha Eagles, who make it for the first time in 11 years after finishing 3rd in the regular season. With the addition of a new manager in Han Yong-duck, the Eagles played with a new mindset and improved confidence. Despite the 144-game season, it took until the 141st game of the defending champions Kia Tigers to sneak into the final playoff spot after defeating the Lotte Giants 6-4 on Friday. Despite dominating the 2017 season, struggles in the bullpen and key injuries marred their season as they look to rebound against the Nexen Heroes during the wildcard series, which begins on Tuesday. The 2018 season was also filled with disappointment for some teams. The Lotte Giants, despite having 3 players with the most hits in the season, ended the season early, just a game behind the Kia Tigers. The LG Twins, having signed former Major League slugger Kim Hyun-soo during the offseason, collapsed in the second half of the season, finishing 8th. But the biggest surprise were the NC Dinos, who finished dead last despite finishing runner-up in 2016 and 3rd in 2017. Struggling with injuries all season, the Dinos finished last for the first time since they joined the league in 2013. With the regular season done and dusted, it's now the business end of the season. Will the Doosan Bears continue to blow teams away, or will we see a surprise? We'll find out when the postseason comes to an end in early November. 이승재, Arirang News.
Now let's keep our attention on sport and golf, namely because South Korea's Jeonnin Ji has won her first LPGA title in 2 years. And the latest one came in her home country at the LPGA KB Hana Bank Championship in the final round on Sunday. John finished with a 66 thanks to 7 birdies and only 1 bogey. That put her 3 shots ahead of England's Charlie Hull. Park Song-hyun of South Korea finished tied for 3rd as well. This was John's 3rd Korea LPGA win, and she is the 7th South Korean to win a tournament so far this year. A local research team has developed a way to recycle oil residue into synthetic graphite. It's expected the new technology will lead to an improvement in a number of domestic businesses, including electric vehicles, in the near future. Jo Sung-min with the details.
The Korea Research Institute of Chemical Technology announced that it recently developed a technology that can produce synthetic graphite out of petroleum waste. Synthetic graphite is considered to be one of the most useful resources in manufacturing electronic products and appliances, since it boasts a high conductivity rate for heat and electricity. They are essential in making anode materials, which go into smartphones, computer parts, and electric vehicles. The team says the technology works because it found a way to produce petroleum pitch. Pitch is made with oil grease that is left behind after crude oil gets refined into petrol or diesel oil. Making pitch requires highly advanced technology, and until now, most nations, including Korea, had all relied on imports from the US, Japan, and Germany. Among them, Korea has been one of the biggest importers of pitch and anode materials. With this new technology, however, researchers say Korea has become self-sufficient and won't need to import the resource anymore.
Pitch is an irreplaceable resource when making graphite and carbon fiber. It melts under high heat and can transform anything into powder.
Researchers also said the new technology will bring down costs of products that use anode materials and will contribute in improving the domestic electric car industry, which heavily relies on graphite. Jo Sung-min, Arirang News.
Good morning. We'll see dust in the air as we head into the afternoon. It's for the first time in 4 months. Toxic smoke from China and stagnant air will boost fine and ultrafine dust levels in the central western region before the dust spreads to the south. But air conditions should improve by the evening. Meanwhile, the heavy smog that covered Beijing on Sunday should ease a bit today, but China's capital city is still blanketed with toxic smog. Japan, however, has moderate air quality. And checking on today's daytime temperatures here in Korea, top temperatures will range between 21 to 22 degrees Celsius under plenty of sunshine this afternoon. Wide temperature fluctuations will persist, with morning lows going down to single digits again here in the capital starting tomorrow, so be sure to dress accordingly. That's Korea for you, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now on this Monday morning here in Seoul. Do stay tuned to us here on Arirang TV. We'll have our next newscast. It's coming up at noon Korea time with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. So until then, goodbye.
Jeju Islands, our FM frequencies are 88.7 in Jeju City, 88.1 in Seogwipo City, and 101.9 MHz in Daejeong area, which is in the Jeju Global Education City. And through the satellite radio Sirius XM, you can listen to us on channel 144 in the US as well.